Welcome to a short preview of my Antarctic expedition that I went on starting in late February. Well, Antarctica is a continent about the size of the U.S. mainland, and my expedition just covered the circled area in the upper right. We started by boarding the marine vehicle Ortelius with about 95 other passengers and 60 crew. We set sail from the city of Ushuaia at the southern tip of Argentina. After a day and a half crossing the Drake Passage, the expedition covered about 11 stops along the Antarctic Peninsula before returning to Ushuaia. During our first crossing of the Drake Passage, which was in rough waters each way, we encountered a pod of about 500 pilot whales heading out to sea. We arrived at the Antarctic Peninsula early on the second day to a beautiful orange sunrise, along with the beginning of numerous icebergs from the Ross ice shelf or calving off nearby glaciers. Our first landfall was George's Point, which seemed to be nearly covered by gentoo and chinstrap penguins, seals, and birds like the skua seen here. These birds were looking for penguin chicks separated from their nest, unlike the nesting chick being tended by its parent in the lower right. On our next stop, Danka Island, we came across a nearly complete skeleton of a large blue whale. After dinner, back on the ship, the first group of campers, including me, headed back to a snowfield to sleep overnight out in the open in a bivvy bag seen here. Everything went fine until the wind picked up and it started to rain, and getting me a little wet through my breathing hole. The next morning, I went on a kayaking paddle around the island. This time, my clothes got wet by water running down the paddle and into my sleeve. Port Lockroy has been featured on the BBC and National Geographic channels as the Penguin Post Office. It's also a museum of early Antarctic explorer provisions, making it a must-stop for tourists. As you can see, it's also overrun by gentoo penguins. Here I am with the publicity shot for our Suffield Observer. The two other people are two of the four staff that stay at the outpost. They were in the process of shutting down the post office and souvenir shop for the season, and they actually closed up and returned to Ushuaia with us. One activity that I did for both the first and the last time was taking an Antarctic cruise. While there was no ice in the water, it was only because it was salt water. Note how quickly I got out and then grabbed a couple of towels. The Lemaire Channel is a picturesque, narrow passage between the Antarctic mainland and Booth Island. Its nickname is Kodak Gap, indicative of its popularity. As we approached it, it looked like it was clogged with ice, but our converted icebreaker had no problem plowing through it. Here is an example of the types of spires that line the channel. With the wind blowing the snow, it often looked like there were flowing rivers of snow down the mountain. As we left the channel, there were numerous ice floes of small icebergs that the seals loved to climb on and rest and sunbathe. Sometimes I would spend a landing just following one or two animals around. Here I placed myself in the path of a seal who stopped about 5 feet from me before deciding to turn around and go back to sleep on a rock. On another rock, I watched a skua rest, preen himself, then spread his wings and eventually fly away. After watching the humpback whales from the ship, several of us got into the small Zodiac landing boats and ended up chasing a couple of the whales around the bay for 2 hours. They would surface for about 5 minutes, blowing several times before sounding for a deep dive. Half Moon Island was our last call and resulted in viewing a large number of chinstrap penguins. Besides the numerous chinstraps, Half Moon Island also included one lonely macaroni penguin who seemed to be well accepted by all the chinstraps. During the return trip across the Drake Passage, we encountered 50 to 60 knots while I was greeted by an angry West Suffield wild turkey, it was still not as interesting as the diversity of the Antarctic wildlife that I had recently encountered.
Gonna hurt himself. What are you doing, buddy?
Well, thank you for watching my preview.
You're gonna break your beak.
If you want to see many more of these slides and videos, listen to a lot more detail, and ask any questions that you like, please come to the complete presentation on Wednesday, June 8th, 7 p.m. at the Kent Memorial Library.